Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Council Chambers. This is Wednesday, July the 20th, and this is a regular session of the Bloomington Common Council. And for tonight's agenda, we will first begin by asking our Deputy Clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Bolden?
Here.
Sims?
Here.
Scamboleri?
Here.
Sandberg?
Here.
Rallo? I'm sorry,
No, if the mics are.
In here?
Thank you, yes. Flaherty?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
And Piedmont Smith? Here.
Thank you. To summarize the agenda this evening, we have no minutes for approval. When we get to the reports section, we will hear from council members. And following that, the mayor and city offices will hear a report for council committees of the Community Advisory on Public Safety Commission, their annual report this evening, and a first opportunity for public comment, 20 minutes to have an opportunity for members of the public to speak on matters not on this evening's agenda. We will have appointments to boards and commissions this evening, and that is followed by legislation for second readings and resolutions, which include Resolution 22-14 to approve an amendment to the 2019 revised cooperation agreement between the City of Bloomington City and the Bloomington Housing Authority, BHA, for provision and operation of low-income housing units and associated payment in lieu of taxes by BHA in exchange for city services, followed by Ordinance 22-15 to vacate a public parcel, a 12-foot wide alley segment running east-west between the Beeline Trail and the first alley to the west, north of 7th Street and the south of 8th Street. Peerless Development is the petitioner. Then we will have legislation for first readings, and that will include Ordinance 22-20 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic, amending Section 15.12.030 to remove 3 signalized intersections and add 3 signalized intersections. Section 15-20-010 by deleting the reference to restricted turn intersections. Section 15.24.020 by changing speed limits at 4 locations. Section 15.32.030 to change parking on Lincoln Street between Smith and 3rd to back-in angle parking, and to add pull-in parking on South Morton Street from West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane to 190 degrees north of West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane. Section 15.320.050 to allow for prohibiting parking in municipal parking lots to respond to weather and maintenance issues. Section 15.32.080 to remove no parking spaces on South Morton Street and South Rogers Street, and to add no parking spaces on Lincoln Street and North Park Avenue. Section 15.32.100 to add 2 loading zones on East 4th Street. Section 15.37.020 to change the boundaries of the Garden Hill Residential Neighborhood Permit Parking Zone. Section 15.040.010 to add paid parking spaces and the Trades District Garage. And Section 15.48.020 to add an administrative towing fee when vehicles are towed for reserved parking or outstanding citation violations. We'll have a second opportunity for public comment, followed by a report of our council schedule before we adjourn this evening. So again, without minutes to approve, we will begin this evening with council member reports. And Vice President Scamboleri and I would like to begin our council reports by reading a statement, and this is a statement called the Local Public Official Statement on the Reversal of Roe v. Wade. This was signed by 34 elected officials in this county, and that was signed on July the 1st, 2022. And the statement reads as follows. In response to the devastating and harmful decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, the undersigned public officials in Bloomington, Monroe County, and township government stand together in support of an individual's right to bodily autonomy and reproductive choice. Further, as community leaders in Bloomington, Monroe County, we are proud to fund the health care, child care, and birth control needs of low-income individuals and families through multiple local grant programs and through township assistance. We stand with Planned Parenthood and the All Options Pregnancy Center as they meet the reproductive health care needs of the most vulnerable in our community. And we call upon state legislators in Indiana to exercise reason and respect and to protect individuals' right to make their own health care decisions in consultation with their own health care providers. We object to any legislative course of action that further erodes a person's right to choose. Thoughtful compassion is the foundation of any just, equitable community. As public officials, it is our responsibility to speak out when we see rights stripped away from our residents, and it is our obligation to oppose decisions that will cause unjust hardship and increase poverty for those we represent. We object to any civil or human right being taken away by activists on the U.S. Supreme Court and to any legislative action that undermines the well-being of our residents or the state of Indiana. 34 members of this community, elected officials, signed on to this, and I will now ask Vice President Scambolari to read the names.
Thank you. The signatures added to that statement include Kim Alexander, Bloomington Township Trustee, Nicole Bolden, Bloomington City Clerk, Michelle Bright, Benton Township Trustee, Nicole Brown, Monroe County Clerk, Dan Combs, Perry Township Trustee, Jennifer Crossley, Monroe County Council, District 4, Trent Deckard, Monroe County Council at Large, Lorraine Merriman Farrell, Bloomington Township Board, Matt Flaherty, Bloomington Common Council at Large, Penny Githens, Monroe County Commissioner, John Hamilton, Mayor, City of Bloomington, Joe Husk, Benton Township Board, Peter Iverson, Monroe County Council, District 1, Lee Jones, Monroe County Commissioner, Hans Kelson, Benton Township Board, Jessica McClellan, Monroe County Treasurer, Jeff McKim, Monroe County Council at Large, Cheryl Munson, Monroe County Council at Large, Isabel Piedmont Smith, Bloomington Common Council, District 5, Dave Rollo, Bloomington Common Council, District 4, Kate Rosenbarger, Bloomington Common Council, District 1, Susan Sandberg, Bloomington Common Council at Large, Eric Schmitz, Monroe County Recorder, Sue Scambolari, Bloomington Common Council, District 2, Judy Sharp, Monroe County Assessor, Jim Sims, Bloomington Common Council at Large, Catherine Smith, Monroe County Auditor, Ron Smith, Bloomington Common Council, District 3, William E. Smith III, Van Buren Township Board, Vic Strife, Polk Township Board, Barb Sturbaum, Perry Township Board, Julie Thomas, Monroe County Commissioner, Stephen Volan, Bloomington Common Council, District 6, and Kate Wiltz, Monroe County Council, District 2.
Thank you. And of course, this statement has been shared with our representatives at the state and the governor of Indiana. Thank you. Now we turn to council member reports. I will start with my left with Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you. I was recently in Oregon for 2 weeks, and while there, I took the opportunity to meet with members of the CAHOOTS team, which is, oh my goodness, now the acronym is going to escape me, but it's an emergency mental health response unit that is mobile, and it receives funding from the city of Eugene, the neighboring city of Springfield, and as well as some funds from the county government of Lake County in Oregon. And I also had a separate meeting with members of the Eugene city government, including the police chief, Chris Skinner. And I expect that probably the CAPS Commission is also familiar with this program, and perhaps we'll hear more about their investigation into it. But I know it got a lot of attention a couple years ago when the issue of police brutality and related concerns was brought to the forefront, which it had been simmering for a long time, but brought to the forefront by the murder of George Floyd. So they have gotten a lot of press and a lot of interest, and the Cahoots program, which is run through the Whitebird Clinic, actually created a 50-page document because they got so much interest, which I do have, happy to share with anybody, kind of how they got started, how their structure is, what their structure is like, how they train people, how they operate, and what their outcomes have been. And so I was very pleased to be able to meet with them. The funding, as I said, was from Eugene and Springfield, and they also get some funding from the Oregon Health Plan, which is the Medicaid plan in Oregon, based on the fact that they divert a lot of cases from the emergency room by helping people where they are in the Springfield and Eugene areas. Chief Skinner does, his office works very closely with Cahoots, and their 911 number, of course, now we have 988, so we'll see how that develops. But their 911 number for decades has had, the dispatchers have had the option of notifying Cahoots or notifying the local police department, or both, to go out on a call. And Chief Skinner really emphasized that this Cahoots is an important part of the public safety network. And it was really fascinating to me to see how many of Eugene City offices are involved. I mean, they have the planning department involved because people who are unhoused are often set up camp in parking spaces, so that's their parking is in their planning department. Of course, their Parks and Open Spaces department is involved. They have parks ambassadors who develop relationships with people who are unhoused or otherwise may need assistance that are in the open spaces. They have neighborhood services officers. In their police department, they actually have 24 community service officers. We have, I think, 2 plus 3 or 4 social workers here in Bloomington. So we are heading that direction as well, but they have 24 non-sworn community service officers and 235 police officers. Of course, Eugene has a much higher population of about 180,000. So it was just very interesting to see how they all work together, and because there are so many departments involved and there are these partnerships with Cahoots and with the city of Springfield, they do have one person who kind of oversees the overall plan of service and service provision to the unhoused population. Not to say that all of the unhoused population would need Cahoots, but many of them do have mental health issues or substance misuse issues. So that was also interesting to me, that they have an unhoused public information officer. So anybody in the public knows where they can go if they have questions or concerns about people who appear to be unhoused. And they also have a business liaison who works with the business community if they notice people who need assistance or have concerns about the impact on their businesses. So there's a lot of interaction there, and I'm looking forward to talking more with people in our own city government and the CAPS Commission and seeing what lessons we can apply here. Eugene, Oregon has one of the highest per capita unhoused population. They have about 4,000 unhoused individuals, and we are at between 350, 380 here, which even though Eugene has a population of 180,000, that's still a huge increase in percentage per population. So they have certainly a lot on their hands and do try to provide services to basically save lives, and Cahoots is a big part of that. So just wanted to report on that. And if anybody wants to have more information or access to the document I was provided, I'd be happy to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
No report this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Rollo?
No report, thank you.
All right, and to my right, Councilmember Volan. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you, President Sandberg. Yeah, I do have a few words. This is our first meeting back after council recess. It's been about 5 weeks or so. And one of the things of not going through weekly meetings is that we are able to travel and just have some time to sit back and think about things. So a couple of things that's come across my mind I'd really like to share this evening. Sometimes you think about why am I here? What are we doing here? And I can only speak for myself. And the answer is that we are here to help people. I've decided I'm not real concerned about people's titles. I'm not concerned about the power people think they have in some cases. I'm just concerned about helping people if you can. There are so many things, mass shootings. There are so many things that we can do to help. A couple things that come to mind. One of them is that we'll have some local issues with our young children. A child's educational outcome should have nothing to do with their parents' income. Think about that. IU Health, and who knows, I'll probably get chased after this one. IU Health is a nonprofit organization. Many of us go there, many of us have physicians and doctors there. A while back, they donated over $400 million to Indiana University. Yet, I know folks who cannot get health care. It takes months for them to find a physician, a primary care doctor. It takes even longer if you need a specialist. And this is from a nonprofit organization? Why don't we take $400 million, put it to the bottom line, and reduce everybody's bill? Just something to think about. I have one more bit of notes here, thank you. Actually, I think that's about it. I've thought about so much. I just want to share that this evening. There are just many things to do, but just remember, when I first got into politics, all I ever wanted to do was help people. And I think my colleagues share that sentiment, and I just wanted to share that with you all. Everyone that's here, thank you for being here. Those are looking at us on Zoom, thanks for listening. And thanks, Madam President, for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you. Councilmember Scambalori.
Yes, thank you. It's a little earlier than I typically make this announcement, but this is our last regular session for the month of July. My next constituent meeting is coming up on Saturday, August 6th at 1:30 p.m. We will hold that meeting via Zoom, and the link for that is available on my website at sueforcitycouncil.com. Thanks.
Thank you. And last, another sad passing to note. Many of us had the opportunity to attend the funeral of Bob Lavisic, our firefighter, a very stalwart member of our firefighters union, a real gem of a leader in this community. And he died way too soon, but he was certainly loved by not only the public servants here in the city of Bloomington who had the privilege of working with him, but also throughout the state, where he was well known in the labor and the firefighters' labor union. And so again, we wish his family well in the commemoration of the passing of Bob Lavisic. Thank you. There are no reports, I do not believe, from the mayor and the city offices, so we now will go to council committees, and we are going to have a report this evening for the Community Advisory on Public Safety. And who would like to begin this evening? I know we have Najla Routsong and Jason McCulloch.
Thank you, and an excellent pronunciation of my name. So I'm also glad that Councilmember Sims mentioned not paying too much attention to titles or pronunciation, because that's something that's important to recognize people. So thank you for your attention to our annual report on the progress of the Community Advisory of Public Safety. As your representative, or as a representative of the Commission, I'm Commissioner Jason McCulloch, and along with Commissioner Najla Routsong, I hope this report can give the Council of the whole and the broader community a sense of public safety concerns, as well as how they might be addressed through ongoing and new initiatives. In addition to the original mission of the Commission displayed on page 1 of our report, and displayed here, I'd like to draw your attention to 3 key foci we've identified as a commission that are present throughout this support. Next slide. And so here are those foci. Specifically, we wanted to amplify voices continually. And so we're welcoming speakers, not just policy experts with titles, but also people with lived experiences. We're listening to particular marginalized communities and expanding the segments of communities that we're engaging. But most importantly, we want to make participation in the civic process as easy and accessible as possible to every member of our community. So in order to account for the broader work of the Commission, before and after I was appointed earlier this year, I now welcome Commissioner Routsong to speak to the formation of our present structure that will lead into committee reports on how our work was accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCulloch. Hello, my name is Najla Routsong, and I am a CAPS Commissioner. I'm going to tell you about our Commission's accomplishments this year as a whole, and then Commissioner McCulloch and I will tell you about the work that we accomplished in committees. In the Commission as a whole, we first created governance and foundational policies to ensure that our Commission can function in a healthy and effective manner. We then invited and listened to 2 national subject matter experts in alternative policing programs and 2 local community leaders in areas of best practices in racial equity and recovery. Near the end of last year and early this year, we took decisive actions in response to the growing trend of religious hate-motivated violence in Bloomington by passing 2 important resolutions: the resolution against Islamophobia and anti-Muslim violence, and the resolution against anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence, recorded and condemned the significant and reprehensible harms that have been perpetrated against our Muslim and Jewish community members. They also affirmed the rights of these members to live, work, study, gather, and worship in safety. These resolutions were passed unanimously only after gathering in-depth reports and testimony from the individuals and organizations who are the most impacted by these acts of hate. Now turning to the work that we completed in committees, beginning with the Conflict Resolution Committee. Our purpose is to conduct research and make recommendations on restorative justice-based governance. Sorry, do you have that? Okay. On restorative justice-based governance meeting guidelines and procedures that encourage healthy, safe, and equitable methods of communication. Our actions taken include referring ongoing conflicts to the Community Justice and Mediation Centers, or CJAM, for swift and fair resolution. We also agreed to research and create a model of restorative justice-based procedures that can be utilized internally on our commission, but also used as a model for other city commissions, boards, and even used to address public issues of conflict in our community more widely. The Alternatives to Policing and turning to the Alternatives to Policing and Crisis Response Committee. Our purpose is to research best practices and perform community outreach to make specific policy recommendations regarding alternatives to policing and public safety methods that will reduce crime, costs, and injustice. Our actions include inviting Professor of Sociology, national expert on policing, and coordinator of the Policing and Social Justice Project at Brooklyn College, Alex Vitale, to tell us about the most important findings and recommendations from his book, The End of Policing. After conducting decades of evidence-based research on the problem of reducing crime in our society and on policing, Professor Vitale has found that increasing funds to police departments neither reduces crime nor improves public safety outcomes. In this committee, we continue to stay in contact with Professor Vitale and to follow his recommendations in our research on best practices in community-based policing models. We also plan to conduct thorough community outreach later this year with all key stakeholders before preparing our final policy and programming recommendations by the end of January 2023. In answer to Commissioner Piedmont Smith's, or Councilmember Piedmont Smith's question about whether CAPS is researching the CAHOOTS program in Eugene, yes, that's one of the top 5 programs that we are conducting more research on in depth at this moment on our committee. And I can reach out to you after this to discuss how best to make the most of your recent research and visit to this program. Moving to the Reparations and Atonement Committee, our purpose is to improve public safety by promoting truthful narratives of history, current social justice outcomes, and stronger community trust among previously marginalized people of Bloomington. Our actions include: we have conducted research on systemic inequities using quantitative public safety indicators such as public health and criminal justice outcomes. And we have gathered testimony on matters of racial inequities and past racial injustice from local community members. We have also researched and recommended a mayoral coalition on reparations called the Mayors Organized for Reparations and Equity, or MORE, to Mayor Hamilton, and urged him to join. Finally, we are currently preparing a resolution to be considered by the Commission, which would address some of the public safety needs that were revealed in the CAPS resolutions 2102 and 2201. You're up. Now, Commissioner McCowlick will tell you about the last 2 committees, Housing and Research.
Thank you again. So, regarding the initial formation of the Housing Committee, our goals are to both research local needs and best practices, as well as forming recommendations for present actions the city can take and is taking to address housing concerns. We hope that our efforts will advance the efforts to make Bloomington a safe and civil city in the ways that you all have been working and continue to work. Therefore, we have researched current literature on best practices in housing advocacy beyond Bloomington, but also as applied in Bloomington. Rather than replicate critical efforts by the city and other entities, though, We identified present initiatives in the community to guide our plans moving forward. Though our committee is still working to establish relationships with these efforts and actors and agencies as described in our report, we hope to offer supplementary information and methods to advance community safety, particularly in terms of housing, as that is an ongoing and constantly changing threat of senses of safety. In support of the work of the Housing Committee and other committees working to address the main safety concerns of the community, the Research Committee partnered with an instructor in the School of Social Work to implement a survey that would gather voices throughout the community. While safety issues are abstract, people are not. Therefore, we implemented a survey through 2 separate courses in IU's School of Social Work, positioned to ask members of the community for their experiences and most pressing safety concerns. The environmental scan was intended to inform the work of our committee and what work of all our committees and what work we can perform to advance the purpose of the commission in addressing safety concerns. Before we turn to the recommendations of the commission as a whole to the council, I'd like to briefly highlight voices we heard that reveal important opportunities to increase safety that will inform the work we continue to do in the year to come. These findings can inform not only our internal work, but also ongoing initiatives of the city as we implement them in continued efforts. As you listen to these voices and findings, we hope this reveals opportunities to continue allocating energies to present efforts as well as interests in how our commission has been working collaboratively to fulfill the purposes of its creation, and how we can advance the broader governance of the city in matters concerning public safety as our efforts continue in the coming year. We ask that you consider the voices that you hear and read as essential elements in our community before considering their merit in terms of application. Fear and insecurity are important to continually address, and the aspects I'll now highlight signal how the CAPS Commission is helping to mitigate their contributing sources. Awesome. Okay. And so the full report can be found in the appendix, but I just want to highlight here, in addition to the mission of the council or the committee, that we're also want to highlight the philosophy behind our methodology to amplify the commission's purposes and connect you with precise voices of underrepresented segments of the community. In terms of our purpose moving forward can be found on page 10, which commits to increasing the safety and civility of continuity of accessibility of citizens of our community. So as you'll see on page 16 of the appended report, some of the safety concerns identified intersect with other efforts of our committee or our commission, particularly concerning housing security, law enforcement responses, and regulation and availability of community spaces. In terms of financial security, we've broken this down into food insecurity, job opportunities, low wages, affordable health care, and limited affordable housing options, since all of these intersect with current efforts of the city. On page 19, we also further broke down housing security to inform the efforts of the Housing Committee to address not just housed or unhoused landlords or tenants, but all multiple concerns of the community. Since we know that the ongoing efforts of housing advocates are troublesome, we've generated the subcategories we'll continue to explore in the year to come. One voice I want to highlight on the next page, page 20, is a respondent that spoke to the complex of housing needs beyond those tenants, landlords, housed, unhoused divisions. So respondent 10 that you see here speaks to multiple needs that need to be addressed, that are being addressed. And so that affirms the work that you're already doing. In terms of police interactions, this often gets broken down into pro-police or anti-police, but our research revealed multiple sentiments, right? So in terms of things like fear, friendliness, effectiveness, and we want to continue to highlight or hear from more voices from the community because we know that there's more feelings than just divisions. One thing that we want to highlight on this page is respondent 9, who said that the officers responded in a way that addressed the problem but never followed up. And so there's an opportunity here for advancing follow-up in the operations of police or law enforcement. On the next page, one respondent didn't want to be on record when they said they just wanted the police to get out of the way. This connects with senses of what community means, right? And so even though this is not action-oriented, we want to explore reasons why people are saying things like this. In additional safety concerns, on page 25, there was a respondent that expressed a desire for community living spaces that support each other. So it's an intent on living spaces where neighbors are actually neighbors. And so that's something that we want to explore in the recommendations I'll touch on at the end that we made to internally. Two things of structural limitation. On 26, there were two things that should not sound new, but people are continuing to express the desire for public bathrooms that can be used by anyone, but also multiple respondents continue to talk about needing to find a place to sleep. And so that affirms efforts that are continuing to be advanced, and we hope that we can inform ways that can be done. And then another that affirms some efforts that are ongoing on the next page, 27, is accessibility. And so we know that many things are being done to improve the conditions of the sidewalks, but certainly a lot of different respondents talked about accessibility, not just for people who have mobility issues, but in general. And in terms of accessing more abstract services, respondent 13 spoke to the stigma about different concerns. And so here they talked about dementia, but we also heard of other mental health concerns, and we want to think about how we can address that as a community and not just put it on individuals. So we'll move past mental health resources, but that kind of ties in with what I just touched on. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is the substance use and harm reduction. And so one respondent spoke to how they don't, one of the reasons they don't trust the police is because the way they deal with substance abuse. And so following up on ongoing research, we want to explore different ways of responding. And certainly the new number, 988, can be a potential step in that direction. And so I just want to highlight on the last page, 30, the recommendations that the research committee made to the commission. And so some of these connect and affirm the purposes of our commission as a whole. But in terms of what we plan to explore, focus groups that could be helpful in asking specific questions, so finding more about some of the concerns we addressed. And certainly what the City Council continues to do, finding alternatives that extend beyond policing to explore anti-oppressive, anti-racist, and effective strategies, but also implementing those in multiple ways. And then the last thing is touching on education, so internally exploring ways that could be accomplished, not just to government officials and elected officials, but also community members on these alternatives. And so now I'll turn it back to Commissioner Routsong to give the recommendations of the committee as a whole and to summarize our report.
Since we are still completing research and community outreach in these important areas of policy and programming related to public safety, all of the Commission's recommendations this year are regarding improving inclusion and access to the Commission for our members based on the following challenges that we have identified. The first one is inclusive quorum rules. So we ask that the city advocate to change the state laws mandating in-person quorum for all commission and committee meetings because we feel that it discriminates against the disabled and otherwise marginalized commissioners who can only attend meetings online, and yet they never have their attendance counted for meeting quorum. Secondly, cost assistance. We request that the council create a budget and/or take other actions to ensure all commissioners have sufficient access to the following resources needed to carry out their duties: childcare, technology, and research materials. Thirdly, transportation. We suggest that the main city parking lot should be made available to all commission members to avoid the mobility, and these are suggestions for all commissions and boards, not just for us especially, but we suggest that the main lot be available to commission members to avoid mobility and cost affordability challenges faced by our members. We ask that the council also ask Bloomington Transit to add an hourly stop at City Hall in both directions. It currently only stops near the City Hall going in one direction, and it's 1 to 2 blocks away, and in the other direction it's 5 or 6 blocks away, which makes it difficult for our disabled and mobility challenged members to take the bus to attend meetings. That's the end of our report and recommendations. Thank you for your time and attention. Commissioner McCallick and I look forward to carrying out the important work of enhancing, fortifying, and expanding the public safety of our city for all community members in the next planning year, and we welcome any follow-up questions you may have for us at this time.
Thank you very much for that very thorough report. We appreciate that. Are there any questions council members may have of the CAPS Commission? Councilmember Volan.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank the commissioners for their report. I thought some of their conclusions were very interesting, and it's a good initial demonstration of what the CAPS Commission can do. So I look forward to looking at the report more thoroughly. And again, I want to say thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, we are now ready for public comment, our first opportunity, 20 minutes set aside, and we will do the announcement as to who's on Zoom. If I can hold you up just a minute, I understand 2 members are here who have presentations, so I want to call on those 2 individuals first, okay? So queue up if you are here and you have materials that you want to have our council attorney and our staff show for us. So how many people in chambers wish to make a public comment this evening? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in chambers. Do we have anyone at home?
I see 2 hands raised on Zoom at the moment, and if there are others on Zoom that would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature to indicate you'd like to speak. You can find that raised hand button in your control bar under the Reactions tab or the More tab. And if you're not able to locate that, please send a chat to the meeting host, and we can recognize you that way. I see
Thank
one additional hand raised at the moment.
So now we have 8.
Three
right?
on Zoom.
We have 8 people wanting to speak. Unfortunately, we will need to limit the time to, let's say, 3 minutes per speaker, so we can get all 8 into the time we have. And with that, let us start here in chambers with our first public comment.
Awesome, thanks. So Dave Askins, the B-Square Bulletin, posted this graph. The idea is that his audience gets to guess what it means. Oh, my name is Greg Alexander. I'm sorry, since I get thrown off. The idea is that his audience gets to guess what it means. I don't know about you guys, but I love data. I'll save you the detective work and tell you he filed a public records request, and this is the occupancy at the 4th Street parking garage from January to June of this year, the first 6 months. And I know it's a lot. I'm just going to rush right in. The first pattern is it usually gets pretty low at night. It returns almost the same number, somewhere between 20 and 50 cars almost every night. It's a little harder to see, but it tends to be mostly empty on weekends too. It's got 5 lines and then a gap, 5 lines and a gap. If anything, it's higher in the summer, so it's not students. It's never been higher than 315. Most days, the peak is between 100 to 150. So these were all clues that told me this graph is the occupancy of a parking garage, mostly for office workers. So it was a Wednesday afternoon. I figured I could just go look at weekday occupancy with my own eyes, and I could figure out which of the 3 garages that I could think of that would fit that description. Next slide, please. The first place I went was the Trades District garage. I counted 28 cars. There are 344 spaces. And Wednesday at 2:50 p.m., there were 28 cars. It is a very large garage. There were 28 cars. We spent more than $10 million recently on this garage. It's been open about a year now. There were 28 cars. So that wasn't it. Next slide, please. Because as you see, it gets to 100, 150 every day. So I went to the 4th Street garage and I counted 147 cars. Bingo. Back to Mr. Askin's graph. I noticed a big flaw in this graph. No offense intended. I love you, Dave. But the y-axis only goes up to 400. It makes sense given the data, but it's not a reasonable basis for this presentation because there's 532 spaces in that garage. So next slide, please. I made my own graph using the same data, and it's a stacked area graph, so I wanted to show you some details in the data set. For each vertical line, you start at the bottom. The blue part is transient parkers, that's like hourly. And then the red part on top of that is contract parkers, which I assume is mostly people with monthly permits because they work right by there. Probably their employer pays for it. And I assume from the pattern that some of them are also like somebody buys 100 parking passes for like a convention or something, but I don't know. And golly, I wish I did. And above that, though, is that white line. And that white line represents empty spaces in the 4th Street garage. And so at a cost of $30 million about 2 years ago, we built 876 spaces. And so far, we've never used more than about 400 of them. Most days, we don't even use 200 of them. This is massive oversupply.
Mr. Alexander, you are at time, so I will give you just a few minutes to conclude if you can.
Okay.
Please.
It's insane. There's no other function of government that's overfunded like that. We never build things with 20 years of anticipated demand, especially sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, for public comment, let us take someone from home, from the Zoom.
Yes, first I believe I see Jim Shelton.
Welcome, Mr.
Good evening,
Shelton.
Council.
You will have
Thank you.
3
Good evening,
minutes.
Council. Thank you, Jim Shelton. Speaking on behalf of CASA again tonight, as I've been telling you, we have a backlog of children for whom we have nobody to assign a CASA. They're on a waiting list. And as a result of that, CASA has decided to have a training session in September for child visit monitors. A child visit monitor is a volunteer whose only responsibility is to visit a child where the child is located once a month, usually for no more than 3 hours a month, and then write a report that will allow the CASA staff to do prioritization on those children on the wait list to decide which ones to move up on the list. This training will be on September 12th, 14th, and 15th, 5:30 to 8:30 for the 12th, 14th, and 15th. So it's a total of 9 hours of training. and then you would work with the CASA staff. And then for people who are, and by the way, that's a good thing for people who want to help, want to get involved, but are afraid they don't have the time to do a full CASA volunteers. And then we do have a CASA training coming up for volunteers who do want to be CASAs, and that'll be in September from the 19th to October 10th. And again, it'll be 3:30 to 5:30, I'm sorry, 5:30 to 8:30, 3 nights a week. And you can go to monroecountycasa.org and click on the volunteer link and get details that might help you decide which of either of these is a good volunteer opportunity for you. I can tell you, having been a CASA now for a while, it's very satisfying. You really contribute to making things better for these children who, after all, have done nothing wrong. Their parents are the ones who have the problem. So on there you will find the application, and you can use the same one, whether you want to be a child visit monitor or a CASA. There'll be a place on there to check which one you're applying for. So please, out there, think about that. We do have over 50 children right now who are on the wait list, and we need volunteers to help take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Now, if we could have the second person in chambers that has a presentation approach the podium. Is there a second person or not?
I believe on Zoom there may be an individual who'd like to present some slides, so I can go to them next.
Okay, so we'll stay in chambers.
Yep.
Those of you in chambers, if you wouldn't mind queuing up, we'll take you one at a time. And state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Mike Carmen, Municipal Code Section 2.04.290, Ordinances and Resolutions Fiscal Impact Statement required. You're familiar with it. You've discussed it before, but you don't adhere to it. What it says is that all proposed legislation must be accompanied by a statement describing the impact of that legislation on the city's finances, including but not limited to revenues, expenditures, and any debt obligations. Now, what I've been told is that you have debated this or considered this among yourselves as a whole or individually, I don't know, but it was reported to me that you have made the conscious decision not to require fiscal impact statements. If you're not going to do that, then repeal the piece of legislation because it says must. You have done a de facto repeal of it by just ignoring it. If you have to go through the process repealing it, it will be the opportunity for the public to comment on why this is important, why this needs to stay, and why you should adhere to it. And would ask that you do so. Considering fiscal impact is relevant at every piece of legislation. I raised this question on what I call the Kirkwood closure ordinance after the fact, because I searched through the legislative packet and I couldn't find a statement. Steve was kind enough to provide me some presentation materials from about that ordinance when that was presented to some other interest group, and it had some discussion of fiscal issues in there, but it was certainly not a fiscal impact statement of what is contemplated by this code section. It should have been required with the fiber optic cable package in that. Now, how much that's an ordinance, how much is it different resolutions, that's kind of hard to figure out. But there's a significant fiscal impact in that has not been considered, was not discussed, appears in no place in that, and in a minute, 12 seconds, I'm not even going to try to get into it, but I'll present a couple of questions that go with this. Larry, no offense intended, but was touting the administration's mantra on that, no new tax, no new tax. I'm sorry, that rings pretty hollow. That's about as hollow as a prior administration, which was very successful. I thought did a great job, not same political party, but they did a good job administration, who upon review of that administration touted no new tax. That was the administration where we took the trash pickup from a general fund obligation to a user fee. So we don't have a new tax, but we institute a user fee. Would you like somebody to explain the difference to me, to my pocketbook, to say no new tax, and yet I now start paying a user fee where I had not paid one before? So no new tax, no new tax. Every dollar in that TIF that's going to go to this fiber optic project would have gone to somebody else, the school corporation, fire district, the counties, the townships, to your general fund, because it gets divided in the same manner as the property tax. Your school corporations being the biggest component in that. So no new tax, but all of those taxing districts that depend upon tax revenues for their operations, and I need to finish up, will not get the benefit of that increase in the future, and more another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. All right, let's take a Zoom comment.
Next on Zoom is Chuck Livingston.
Thank you. This is Chuck Livingston. A few weeks ago, the council discussed scooters blocking sidewalks. I wanted to share a few photos with you. Could you put up the first photo? My first comment about this is that during the meeting, several council members wanted to know how much of a problem scooters are, how many violations are going on. I'm not sure why that's a question. Here is a scooter obviously blocking a handicap ramp. It's in violation of the ordinance. This alone should be sufficient to have somebody out enforcing the ordinance. Nonetheless, I don't know how many violations it takes to get the ordinance enforced. In any case, I took this picture on May 29th. It was a Sunday morning, and I took this picture at 7:25 in the morning. It was in a walk I took around Elm Heights in downtown. So that's 7:25. Next picture, please. That was at 7:26. Next picture. That's 7:38. Next picture. That's at 7:40. Next picture. 7:45. Next picture. 7:48. Next picture. That's 7:48 again. Next picture. 7:51. Next picture. 7:51. Next picture. 7:51. Next picture. 7:58. Next picture. 8 o'clock. Next picture. 8:01. Next picture. 8:04. Next picture. 8:06. Next picture. 8:08. Next picture. 8:09. Next picture. 8:09. Next picture. 8:09. Next picture. 8:12. And the next picture. 8:16. In 50 minutes, I've illustrated to you, I think it's close to 30 scooters in violation. To close, because time is short, the answer when someone in a wheelchair or visually impaired finds their ways blocked by these, the current answer from the city is call or file a U report or call the scooter company, and within 2 hours, somebody will clear it out.
Mr. Livingston, we thank you for those pictures, and you are at your time. And next, approach the podium, please, and state your name. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, Council. My name is David Wolf-Bender. I'm a third-year student at IU. But tonight, I'm going to add another descriptor to the beginning of my name because I'm also a proud Jewish student at IU. And I want to bring an issue to the Council's attention and to the public's. Just after the City Council let out for its summer recess, I came across this in my news feed. It's an article from the IDS, IU's campus newspaper. The story details a Bloomington-based coffee business that is using anti-Semitic logos and language in their promotion, in their promotional material. So why am I here tonight? I am here because of conversations I often have with fellow residents. I am told by a lot of my friends that while there may be pockets of hate across our state, I am told that somehow it doesn't exist here in Bloomington. And I'm here tonight to say that hatred and anti-Semitism does exist here in Bloomington, and I'm here to say that it hurts. Since in the past 2 years since I came to IU, I've seen this firsthand. I've seen a long string of anti-Semitic incidents. 2 years ago, in one of my first month on campus, a story came out about an anti-Semitic slur being thrown at the IU Hillel building during a Jewish community service. Then a mezuzah belonging to a Jewish student was torn down from a dorm room door. Then, in December 2021, swastikas showed up all across the city, one appearing and one coinciding on the first night of Hanukkah. Then, comments on a website attacking Jewish student organizations at IU, and now a Bloomington business creating a logo that looks mysteriously similar to a swastika. I myself have witnessed and faced anti-Semitism in this community. Implicit and explicit, it hurts. And while I do not and will not speak for all Jews at IU, I can tell you that it makes me personally feel unsafe and it makes me worried. And yet still, I love this city, and one of the many reasons I chose to attend IU was because of its thriving, large Jewish community, one of the largest among colleges in the country. Hillel International estimates that there are nearly 4,500 undergraduate and graduate Jewish students at IU. It's a significant proportion of our city, and it's a significant proportion of the IU community. So what can we do? Our leaders can speak up. We can condemn these incidents. We can report these incidents. We can have conversations with our friends and families to discuss the consequences of anti-Semitism and hatred. We can adopt the working IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and we can live up to the highest of Jewish values. We can educate our kids. We can show them that this type of hatred is wrong, or any hatred for that matter, is wrong. Because in Judaism, education is not just a value, it's a responsibility. I'm not here tonight to ask for one specific policy from this council or the city leadership. One policy cannot change this. I'm here to call attention to this issue because in August, IU's 4,500 Jewish students, I'm finishing up, will return to campus, and IU's Hillel, Chabad, and other Jewish student organizations, along with city, temples, and organizations, will organize High Holy Day events and services. They deserve to be safe. They need to be safe, and our city needs to ensure their safety, because safety for all, regardless of who they are or their religious affiliation, is not just a value for our city, it's a responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next commenter from Zoom.
Yes, next on Zoom is Kamala Brown Sparks.
Welcome, you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kamala Brown Sparks, and I would like to ask Isabel Piedmont Smith if she could send me the material on Cahoots.
All right, that request has been made. Is it possible for you to leave an email in the chat for our administrators to?
The CAPS Commission, so we'd be happy to forward that information on to her.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, in chambers, who is next?
Good evening, Common Council. This is Christopher MG from the Bloomington Chamber. Hope everybody had a well-earned, restful recess. I want to commend the work of the council on behalf of the residents of Bloomington. You had big lifts in both the lit increase and the Meridian deal. These were no easy issues to navigate. I thank all of you for your deliberation on these two issues. Speaking of lit, the local income tax. If you recall, one of our economic priorities at the Chamber was expansion of transit. The Chamber has long advocated an enhanced system that provides greater access to employment prospects. With the influx of new revenue, now is the time for the council to act in a first step of providing access outside of city limits. Your constituents' transportation needs do not arbitrarily end at those city limits. This action ultimately will include an amendment to Bloomington Municipal Code 2.76. However, we need to act now to get this expansion rolling. In the short term, the Chamber is advocating for a simple resolution that puts forward this body's intent for Bloomington Transit 3 line to be extended approximately 1.5 miles to Daniels Way. What this does is open valuable Park 48 education employment hub to city residents. Area employers such as Cook, Baxter, Tussis, and their proper employees would benefit greatly from this expanded transit options. The students served by Ivy Tech campus would also have a great entry into this. This access provides real economic opportunities. It helps people. Whereas the East-West Express line will be ideal, we are firmly aware that such an option will most likely take years, not months. This Chamber recognizes the need for the county to be responsible for a portion of that marginal increase in costs associated with such service. A preliminary talk with one of the county council members appears to be receptive to such an agreement. This resolution is a good faith effort to make the long envisioned initiative come to life. It's also the first step in creating a regional transportation blueprint upon which to spring from. I thank you for your time tonight. It's nice to have the council back.
Thank you, Mr. MG. Is there anyone else from Zoom, or was that it? Okay, please approach the podium and you will have 3 minutes. Please state your name.
Darrell Rubel. Got a little bit of good, bad, and ugly again, part two. I was sitting at home a while ago and I heard Miss Piedmont Smith make a couple of comments about Oregon. I hear that a lot up here. Oregon, Seattle. We're not Seattle. We're Bloomington. It's hard to duplicate an original. Bloomington is its own place. And the citizens of Bloomington don't want to hear about Oregon or Seattle. When they burnt them buildings down in them riots, Seattle and Oregon, we lost faith in that part of the country. And the bricks that were on the sidewalk, the pile of bricks that someone dumped off there, we never found out who left those. I want to know. But anyway, also, who closed down Allen Street in between, what is that, Morton and Walnut Street? Why? Why is that road closed? I know you can't answer. I'm just saying, why is that road closed? Someone needs to explain in the paper why that road was even closed. And another thing, too, I busted a wheel the other day on my 2012 Chevy Impala. I love my car. I've had love affairs with cars for years. But that thing at Allen Street and Rogers, every time I come up Allen Street and I'm heading east and I turn south on Rogers, I always hit that darn thing. It's a monstrosity. It needs to go. The fire department probably hates that thing because when they're roaring up at Rogers Street at 100 trying to get to the house, they got to slow down there. Man, that thing's got to go. And I want somebody to buy my wheel that I busted there. And every time I turn, I always hit that thing. Someone's done that on purpose. But that thing's got to go. And that thing over on West 3rd behind Rose Hill, that's got to go. You know. But Bloomington's the original place, man. I love Bloomington. I've lived here all my life. And you know what? Another thing, too, I hear a lot of people talking about Bloomington police. Oh, they're, you know, nobody likes them. So I've had dealings with them for the last 40, 50 years, and they've always treated me fair. There's times where I may have bumped heads with a couple of them, right? Everybody does. It's not a perfect world. But they've always been very professional with me. And I do like the camera things they wear. But they're a bunch of great guys, man. I had interaction with Dana Cole the other day from Bloomington Police. Man, he treated me like gold, man. Them guys are great guys. And there's probably a couple of guys that kind of rub people the wrong way when they interact with them, but they're great people, man. Bloomington Police, they're good people, man. They really are. They got a tough job out here. They've got to deal with the overdoses, the homeless stuff, and it's continuous. They arrest a person, and next day, they see that same guy on the sidewalk walking down the sidewalk. He maybe risked his life arresting that dude, and that guy's walking down the sidewalk.
Mr. Rubel, and you have your time,
Okay.
and we appreciate you being here this evening.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening, and welcome back.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public comment this evening. So we will now move on to appointments to boards and commissions, and I understand we have some.
From interview Team A, I'd like to nominate to the Commission on Aging, Linda Hall to seat C4, Wendy Rubin to seat C1, and for the Commission on Black Males, I'd like to nominate James Simon for C2.
Commission on the Status of Black Males. Second.
All right, so those nominations or those appointments have been proposed and seconded. Should we call the roll?
Councilmember Boland?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Scambolery?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
And Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Those appointments have been approved. We thank you for that. Are there more?
Madam Chair, Team A has 2 more appointments as well. And I'd like to move that Kent McDaniel for seat C3 be reappointed to the Public Transportation Transportation Corporation Board of Directors. I'd also like to move that for the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, Monty Rose, seat C2, be appointed.
I'd like to second those nominations.
All right, those have been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
and Bolden.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, those have been approved as well. And we thank Team A for getting those filled. Anything else? That's it? All right, very good. Moving on to legislation for second readings and resolutions.
Madam President, I move that Resolution 2214 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Nope, can't do that. Will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Scambolery,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Bolden,
Yes.
and Sims.
Yes.
Thank you, and will the clerk please read?
Resolution, I'm sorry, give me one moment. Resolution 22-14 to approve an amendment to the 2019 revised cooperation agreement between the City of Bloomington, parentheses, quote, city, end quote, end parentheses, and the Bloomington Housing Authority, parentheses, quote, BHA, end quote, end parentheses, for provision and operation of low-income housing units and associated payment in lieu of taxes by BHA in exchange for city services. The synopsis is, the Bloomington Housing Authority is requesting the council's approval of an amendment to the 2019 revised cooperation agreement between the City of Bloomington and the Bloomington Housing Authority. The revision is required to eliminate an outdated section, Section 10 of the cooperation agreement.
Thank you.
I move that Resolution 2214 be adopted.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, and we're ready for a presentation. Who is with us this evening to begin this? Are you flipping a coin?
Larry Allen, Assistant City Attorney. In 1961, we entered into a cooperation agreement with the Bloomington Housing Authority at its creation to kind of enter an agreement for a payment in lieu of taxes for the establishment of the Housing Authority's affordable housing. A secondary partner in that was the Public Housing Administration, which existed at the time, which is now known as HUD, at least as the successor organization. In 2019, we decided that it might be time to revisit that 1961 agreement and amend it and update it. And specifically, that would happen because BHA was approved to undergo the RAD conversion, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program through HUD, conversion of its properties, in which case allowed for private investment. We needed to update the cooperation agreement to essentially provide for the diversification of ownership, temporary ownership, as it were, of those properties. Those are long-term lease to these private organizations for the RAD conversion so that they can make investments, do updates that BHA would have never been able to do on its own, and convert the housing to Section 8 housing. This is a further amendment that's kind of come from the HUD end. So in the original 1961 cooperation agreement, there was some language about any investments that the city made that were outside of an annual financing agreement and that were post any obligations to basically the HUD predecessor and were on top of any operational cost would flow back to a combination of the city and the Public Housing Authority, and then they would be distributed. That section essentially has been replaced in both instances, both from the HUD standpoint and the city standpoint. So from the HUD standpoint, they have new agreements, they have new regulations that they impose on BHA. They actually flag this as a potential concern because one of the requirements of the RAD conversions is that part of the financing is that you sign an abrogation agreement, which basically says that all other financing that you obtain is subordinate to HUD financing, which is kind of what Section 10 a little bit was getting at in part. Additionally, the city, who provides direct funding from time to time to BHA, enters into specific grant agreements that are individual. We have our own terms, we have our own repayment terms. The provisions of Section 10, which we are proposing to amend the agreement to eliminate, essentially were for any potential infrastructure investments that were outstanding. We've identified none that are outstanding, and we have identified no potential projects or investments that would be eligible for Section 10. So we think its elimination has no financial impact on the city, has no impact on the residents, and also does not impact the fundamentals of the agreement itself for the payment in lieu of taxes. I will just note as an aside, we have typically waived that payment in lieu of taxes every single year. That's kind of something that comes before you on an annual basis. You would still have the opportunity to do that. This doesn't change that agreement. All it basically takes away is that Section 10 that says, if ever they made a profit on that property, then potentially those funds could flow back. But if there's no investment that we've made that's outstanding, there's no profits to flow back to us anyways that we would be able to receive under that section. So we just don't see it operating in any functional way at this point. And because it was potentially interfering with the new HUD regulations and agreements that they're required to sign, we recommend removal of that section.
All right.
I'm sure that was totally clear. Absolutely.
Very good. I got it. I was with you the whole way. Any questions for Mr. Allen? See, what a good job you did. There are no questions. All right, we will go to the public for any comments on the Resolution 22-14 regarding our agreement with the BHA.
If there are any members of the public on Zoom that would like to comment on this resolution, you can use the raise hand feature to indicate your desire to speak. You can find the raise hand button in your control bar under either the Reactions tab or the More tab. And if you're not able to locate that, please use the chat feature to let the meeting host know you'd like to comment.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone in chambers wanting to make a comment. No hands,
no
from
hands
Zoom?
going up in Zoom.
All right, we are back to the council for either final comment or any additional questions before we call the question. All right, seeing no comments. Will the clerk please call the roll on Resolution 22-14?
Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Scambolery.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that passes 8-0-0. We appreciate you for bringing us the report. Next up.
Madam President, I move that Ordinance 2215 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
and Sandberg.
Yes, and will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2215, to vacate a public parcel, a 12-foot wide alley segment running east-west between the Beeline Trail and the first alley to the west, north of 7th Street and south of 8th Street. Peerless Development is the petitioner. And the synopsis is: the petitioner, Peerless Development, requests vacation of a segment of an alley running east-west between the Beeline Trail and the first alley to the west and situated north of 7th Street and south of 8th Street in order to continue using the right-of-way as part of the Johnson's Creamery site and to allow for a proposed development at 335 West 8th Street. The Committee of the Whole due pass recommendation was 0-3.
Thank you.
I move that Ordinance 2215 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. And with us to present is someone on Zoom this evening?
I'll just mention, I know we have several representatives of the property owner here with us, and Eric Grulich from Planning and Transportation. I don't know if Eric had any presentation planned. I know this has been discussed several times at council, so I'll defer to Eric if he has anything to report at this time.
Thank you. Yes, I don't have any new information from the planning department themselves. I was under the impression that Beth Kate Corporation Counsel was going to be possibly presenting something on behalf of the city as a whole. I'm certainly happy and able to go over the Planning Commission petition as a whole, but I don't know if that's necessary for the council, but I'm happy to do whatever works for the council.
Thank you, Mr. Grulich. And if we could just get a general summary of where things are, where we before we went into recess, might be helpful.
Beth Kate, Corporation Counsel. Welcome back, everyone. So as you mentioned, President Sandberg, when council left for recess, where this was left was that you would come back at this meeting and that the city and Peerless would continue to try to negotiate a contribution toward public art in exchange for the right-of-way vacation. We have not been able to reach a deal on that. The city had asked for, the last thing that we asked for was $200,000 over 2 years. And what Peerless came back with was $75,000 after operating for 6 months at 85% plus occupancy in their new building. And so we think that the asset is worth more than that. We think that the city should get a reasonable contribution toward what would be a valuable public art installation in exchange for the right-of-way. And so we haven't been able to reach a deal on that. My understanding is that, and I've seen, I think, an email that went to you all as well shortly before this meeting from Peerless that has proposed moving the right-of-way effectively, having the council vacate the current right-of-way, and then if council wishes, having them dedicate a new right-of-way that I believe from a look at the map would be in the Johnson Creamery Historic District. I have various thoughts on that, but I don't know if you want those now or you want to hear from Peerless further on that, because I don't know how much time you've all had to digest any of that in terms of what they're proposing. But yes, I mean, I'm happy to comment on it whenever you would like.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know that any of us have had much time to think about that. I think Monday was the first that I had heard anything about an alternative arrangement. So if I could ask the petitioners to make a brief presentation about what you're proposing or recommending that the council consider.
Hello, everyone. This is Michael Cordero with Peerless Development. Can you hear me all? Or can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, after having discussions with the city and ultimately city staff and not being able to come to an agreement on an amount that this project can really afford, and then having conversations with council members individually, the idea came about of relocating the alley, and we've been sort of trying to figure out what the process of that would look like. And where we've shown it drawn is just outside of the historic district. So it basically would fall just north of the historic district. And we think that it's an appropriate place for the alley, given the plans, the existing building and the plans for the proposed building. It would actually be a usable right-of-way, once again, where right now it is not. So we would be happy to move forward with some sort of a plan to basically relocate the location of this alley in similar size and shape. And one way that I've been told that could be done is a vote on vacating this evening, and then we move forward. Again, I sort of said if the council and the city or whoever wants to weigh in on that would like this alley and like to keep it and place it into service, we're happy to dedicate it and work through with the Board of Public Works and the Planning Commission to ultimately replat the property and dedicate the new parcel back to the city.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to make a presentation before we go to council questions? I'm not seeing any hands go up, so we're back to council. Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Bowen.
Yes, actually, I'd like to speak with Mr. Grulich if he can come back on. Hello, Mr. Grulich, good to see you. From a bureaucratic standpoint, Mr. Cordero's idea, how complicated is that? I mean, are you concerned about the process, or is it safe to assume that if the developer is willing to cooperate in replatting the alley, that it will be just a formality? What's your take on that?
The overall subdivision wouldn't be complicated at all. It would just go to the Plan Commission for one hearing for primary plat approval that then could be delegated to staff. This is in the downtown, so there's not really an issue with impervious surface coverage at this location. We would need to just look at a few things in relation to the loss of some of the land for the right-of-way dedication for the alley. But I don't think that overall there would be any major complications or hindrances that would prevent that. As a planning department representative, do you have any concerns about their idea? Do you endorse, not endorse, or have no opinion on it? I would say we probably have no opinion on this. You know, obviously the vacation of the alleyway is totally at the discretion of the council. You know, people are only required to dedicate dedicate right-of-way for roads when they subdivide a property. So alley dedication in the downtown is never something that's really required. So I don't think as a department overall we have a problem with the proposal. Finally, is there any historic designation issue with moving the alley south, which is, it looks like one alley width that they're planning to move it south, or maybe two. Is there any concern with it? Is there any potential conflict with the Johnson Creamery Historic District? Or is it being redefined as a matter of this proposal? I'm not seeing anything. Moving a property line usually doesn't have any implications for, you know, historic districts. Historic districts regulate buildings, you know, new construction. So the location or the alteration of a property line shouldn't have any major implications because it's in a historic district. Thank you. I appreciate the answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on our Zoom screen have a question? I'm not seeing a hand. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wonder if Mr. Zodi could speak to the possible infringement on the historic district. I just want to confirm that the new proposed alley, and I don't even know if you've had time to look at it since we barely have, would that be outside the historic district?
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. John Zodi, Director of the Hand Department. I actually, Corporation Counsel Kate and I were just discussing, we thought this was inside the district. And so, Mr. Cordero, I would need to look at the lines, to be honest, Council, because in my memory, the historic district line surrounded the smokestack, but then dropped to the south to not, and sort of went along the southern line of the existing alley in the right-of-way. So I assume, I thought this existing alley was inside the district. So if there's official clarity on that from the engineer who drew the map here, I appreciate that, but it's my impression it's in the district. I could be wrong though, so I need to compare the two, but my memory was that we drew the line around the stack and then the line dropped down further just to avoid getting into the building at all. So
is it acceptable in historic preservation terms to have a right-of-way within the boundaries of a historic district?
So we discussed this today, and if I may, when I get back to my chair, I'm going to look back at the official map that passed and see if I'm incorrect there, just to make sure I'm not telling you the wrong thing. And if any of the folks online want to clarify that further, I'd appreciate it. But I'll go back and look because I, in my head, have that right away inside the district. Be that as it may, we discussed some today, Councilmember Piedmont Smith, what that means if a right-of-way is inside the district. It wasn't much discussion at the HPC when this was moving forward on a historic district, because we had an existing right-of-way here. One thing that sort of leads us to that question is whether this would require a certificate of appropriateness. So any sort of intervention in a historic preservation district sort of is the threshold of a COA, which is a certificate of appropriateness, is something you need to be concerned about, right? So anytime you want to intervene in that, you have to think about what scrutiny it's under. And so a COA here, we don't believe, in conversations with the legal department looking at Indiana code today, we don't believe that a COA would be required here because the statute is pretty clearly stating that the only time you need a COA is if you're intervening on the visible structure. So you're changing the appearance, you're altering and making an addition or something like that. This right-of-way currently is not a visible right-of-way, if you know what I mean. It's on a map, it's a rectangle here. If that COA, or excuse me, if that right-of-way is inside the district, in fact, and there was anything done to improve that right-of-way, so let's say you wanted to change the pavement to bricks or something like that, that would change the visible appearance of the right-of-way, that then could require a COA. But it doesn't, to answer your question more simply, it doesn't intervene, it doesn't disrupt the historic district in its current form if it is just to be a new right-of-way as the current one exists. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. Did I answer your question? I do want to go look.
Yes.
So we had some research. I want to thank the legal department for going through this today, because we did raise that question internally as a staff to answer that. But I do want to clarify where the new right-of-way would be, whether it's in the district or not. So.
All right, Councilmember Sims has a question.
Did Mr. Cordero have something else to add before I ask a question?
Oh, did someone? Yes, Mr. Cordero.
I was just going to add that my recollection was the historic district stopped just at the edge of the parking spaces, and that's sort of where we started the alley. But we do have, I believe, room to move that proposed alley a little bit north if it does run into conflict and that becomes an issue. So I think there is a little bit of wiggle room with that location of that proposed alley.
Does that clarify a little bit?
And I'm looking through my files to try to find something that I could present.
First question, Mr. Zodi. We've been in recess for about 5 weeks or so. Has the HPC met during our recess time?
Yes, they have.
And did Peerless have an opportunity to clarify and clear all this up through HPC?
There wasn't.
So there would be no real questions tonight if it had taken that route?
Sure. So the issue with the new right-of-way had not been brought to my attention prior to Mr. Lucas communicating with the administration that there was this proposal. So that was earlier this week, I believe, and then got that information. So prior to that, Councilmember Sims, there hadn't been any discussion about a new proposed right-of-way. The only discussion at the HPC, Historic Preservation Commission, during recess was the grant regarding the engineering study that was done, which I think you're familiar with, that was entertained. So Peerless had that on an HPC agenda, but there was no discussion of this prior to this week, because I don't believe we knew about it.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
And this is for Peerless or Mr. Cordero. Before we went on recess, I thought, as I recall, that one of the issues or something you were going to research was looking into accountability of your title company from some of the missteps right from the beginning with the vacation of that alley. What has been the results of your research in that regard?
We were notified that the title company has fully denied our claim, basically based on the original plat map of the city of Bloomington.
So
they're referencing that they will not cover anything that was originally marked on the original plat map and not subsequently amended via ordinance. And there's no recorded ordinance of that alley being vacated, so thus they're denying any coverage.
thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, Ms. Kate, may I ask you to opine on how this impacts the impasse for the public art?
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. How the new proposal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I would say it doesn't affect our view of what would be appropriate value in exchange for the right-of-way vacation. I don't think the administration sees this as an equivalent value. It's obviously, this question is ultimately up to the council. It's your call. But we don't think either that what we've asked for is unreasonable, and it's within the scope of other art projects, as I discussed before, but also just think that it's an appropriate public investment in art here. But also in terms of the vacation of the alley, a couple of things that, again, this is also brand new to all of us. So, but my immediate reactions are, one, I think you're being asked to vacate right of way without what would be, and no shade being thrown at Mr. Cordero or anyone else, but actually no binding commitment, if you will, to get anything in exchange ultimately for that. So that's one thing. I do also, as John Zodi was saying before, I also recall the historic map being just below the current alley, which means that if this is in the historic district, what you're effectively doing is eliminating some buffer against that historic district as well, which just lends itself to a little bit of a different value for the current alley versus the one that they're proposing. I guess I'll look back at the map too, but that was my recollection because initially it encapsulated the stack and okay, yeah, there. So anyway, so there's that. But no, it really, I don't think it's changed our mind. I wouldn't say that that's an appropriate exchange. It kind of feels a little bit like kicking the can down the road for the council when and if someone wants to do something with the Johnson Creamery property, whether that's Peerless or whether they decide to sell that and it's a potential new owner looking at it, they're going to come for a right-of-way vacation, presumably, in which case you're going to be confronting the same issue at that time. And if it is in the historic district, it's an encumbered space already. This is another encumbrance, and so I don't know that you'll be able to ask for as much. I just don't know. So in any case, it really doesn't change our thinking on this. Thanks for the question, and those are our views.
Well, thanks for your opinion there.
Thank you. Any more first round questions? And I will ask one of the Peerless representatives. This is kind of begging the question that if the council does determine this evening not to vacate these alleys, where does that put you with your design? Where does that put you with your decision to either move forward under the more restrictive circumstances, or would you, again, be more motivated to sell? Is that a question you're prepared to answer this evening?
What I can say is that it would likely set us back and run us afoul from our investors in our Qualified Opportunity Zone Fund. So sale would probably wind up being, moving to a higher priority versus us continuing to move forward and try to execute and deliver the building as currently designed. Redesign, at this point between cost and time would probably not be in the cards for us.
Because at this point, a redesign of the property that would work around the alleys would just not be feasible or fiscally in your ability?
We've already fully designed and created and paid for full sets of construction drawings twice now. So there's no way that we can afford to do this for a third time.
So
on this project.
making it smaller in scale would just simply not be in the cards at this point.
Yeah, from a timing standpoint, it would be basically a full redesign of the building, starting over from conceptual design, all the way through full construction drawings, and that each go around is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that really would not be, and the time that it would take to execute on that. We wouldn't be sitting here sort of next year in the same position at a race against the clock to get started on time.
All right, thank you. And I see a hand up from Councilmember Flaherty.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question about the first point that Ms. Kate made, which had to do with the fact that a commitment made by Peerless in a public meeting like this as sort of a condition for, or an understanding as a condition for approval of the vacation is not in fact binding. So I wanted to ask either Ms. Kate or Council Attorney Lucas or both to weigh in on the legally recommended mechanics of moving forward if this is of interest to the council in terms of could we table this, have several issues resolved at Plan Commission, including the subdivision and platting, conditional upon later approval of a vacation by the council, such that we wouldn't run into that question of whether or not anything is binding.
So I don't want to get out in front of you, Stephen, if you want to weigh in.
I'll weigh in first. If Corporation Counsel Kate has anything else to add. The council has a number of options available tonight to postpone or delay action on the ordinance if it feels that's necessary. One option would be to table the ordinance, which would have the effect of indefinitely postponing this until a motion to take the ordinance off the table is introduced at a later meeting. So just sequentially here, if the council was interested and if the petitioner intended to pursue this replatting, one option might be to table the ordinance, allow the petitioner to proceed with the Plan Commission, and I understand the Plan Commission can approve of plats with conditions. You all saw something similar with the Hopewell site when the Redevelopment Commission went back and revised their planned plat for that site, which was approved, conditioned on the council then vacating the existing right-of-way. So that may be the recommended sequence of events if the petitioner intends to pursue this path and the council is interested in entertaining that option. I'd certainly recommend the council not approve this ordinance tonight. And again, no disrespect to the petitioners, but there may be issues that they're not thinking through or aware of that could come up in the Plan Commission process. So just to make sure that things are done in the right order, I'd recommend that the council hold off on any vacation until a new plat is approved.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That seems like the sensible approach to me as well. That would be the correct order of proceedings. So, council members, okay, I wasn't sure if you were raising your hand. So yes, I mean, we've discussed this a little bit, and I think we would take the same view of an appropriate order if this were something that the council were interested in exploring.
Thank you. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes, thank you. Just to confirm my understanding, what's being proposed by the petitioner this evening is that we vote in favor of vacating the alley tonight with the understanding and commitment that we'll do this. And taken off the table entirely is any investment in public art or the surrounding area, correct? So it's not a both and.
I mean, again, I've seen this very recently. That is my understanding, is that what they are proposing is that any contribution or investment toward public art is off the table. This would simply swap one alley for another.
One piece of land for another.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And this is, I didn't mention this before, but again, as part of our thinking on this, just to elaborate, this is market rate housing that's going in. Our thinking, it's not affordable housing. We're not getting that public benefit from this. And so part of our thinking is wrapped up in what is an appropriate public value and investment from this. So, and that we think would be doable in the way that we've proposed it over time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other first round questions before we move to a second round? Seeing nothing from Councilmember Rollo. Councilmember Volin.
Could we please have an image on the screen of the proposal to move the alley? Does anybody have that image that can be shown before the whole chamber?
It's in our addendum, isn't it?
Mr.
so
Cordero,
we
I
can see
don't know
it.
if you have that available. I'm happy to pull that up if you'd like.
I could pull it up in a second, or if you can get it first, I'll work towards it right now. There we go.
Okay, so please orient us. The gray area is the existing Johnson Creamery, and the tower is where?
The circle that is partially located, yes, in the red.
So the alley in question goes through the tower, is that right?
That is correct.
And the proposal to move the alley is to move it one alley length, just basically one lane south.
That is correct.
Okay. I think my question now is for Mr. Zodi. The space just south of the alley is apparently parking, is that right?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Volin, could you repeat that?
The space is just south of the blue alley, the proposal is parking, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay. So that there would have to be a drive lane for those spaces to be used. That blue area is necessary for those spaces to be parking spaces, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Are the parking spaces part of the historic use of the Johnson Creamery?
Not in the historical context, no. So
they're.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Were you?
Sorry, they're existing parking spaces today.
Right.
Those are going to stay in the same location.
I mean, have they ever been anything except parking spaces in the history of this project?
In the history of this project, and it's sort of since the restoration of the creamery into an office building, I would wager there's always been some parking in that area. I'd have to look at old maps to see what was there prior to that, council member, but the parking has been there for some time. I might also add, just for context, that the line was clarified with Mr. Lucas and pulled up the as-passed ordinance 2206, and the district line does go through that alley of the historic district. And so when the council adjusted the map, it did include the parking area. I believe the intention there was to provide a bit of a buffer for the historic structure so that anything closer that would encroach upon the actual structure might require some action by the HPC. So that's why you see the parking lot, so to speak, as part of the historic district. It's not because it's a parking lot, it's because that's the area that was determined to be best for the historic district representation.
Okay, I may have more questions, but thank you for now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Rowland.
Oh, me? Wait, me again?
Go ahead. I didn't see any
well,
hands
no,
up.
I mean, I think I'm sort of out of questions. I guess I'll ask a question that may be rhetorical. I mean, one of the things we saw on that map is that the smokestack itself was built directly on top of the alley vacation. I mean, this is or the alley in question. So the alley, however old the tower is, that's how long that alley has been not on anyone's radar. So I guess I'm not seeing the harm in moving the alley as requested by the developer. But again, like I don't really know. I don't have any more questions, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Thank you. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you, and I don't know who can answer this, but I have a simple question. What they're asking us to do is vacate what we've got, move it here a little bit, let them do some stuff, move it back, and everything's even Steven. But I've not heard any agreement or offer for the artwork and the things that we've talked about in the first place. So where does all that fit in with what we're talking about, this proposal tonight to move an alley? And where does the administration and what we've been debating this whole time, where does that fit in? It seems like this is some sort of a move kind of to get around dealing with the administration on what they've asked.
Thank you, Councilmember Sims. My understanding is that this is in lieu of any contribution to public art investment in exchange for vacation of the right-of-way that exists currently. So yes, my understanding is the same as yours, which is that this would be separate and alternative, and there would be no such contribution forthcoming. Mr. Cordero can correct that if I'm wrong, but that's the understanding I have from what I've seen.
That is correct. The understanding that we heard and what we heard was that the city was requesting a financial contribution for us, for basically the city giving up a public asset. And what we're proposing is that the city's giving up nothing. It's simply relocating an alley that's currently not in use and putting it in a place where it can be, put to use. So we feel like that is a one-for-one exchange of value, and that the ask for additional contribution is no longer valid.
Yeah. I mean, obviously sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Sure. Okay.
Any other questions from council? All right, seeing no further questions from council, let us go to the public and see if there are any comments with respect to the alley vacation issue.
And if there are attendees on Zoom that would like to speak to Ordinance 2215, you can use the raise hand feature to indicate you'd like to comment. You can find the raise hand button in your control bar under the Reactions tab or the More tab. And if you can't locate that, please send a chat to the meeting host to let us know you'd like to comment.
All right, we're seeing no commenters here in chambers. Many hands going up. All right, we are, yes, see someone?
Oh, I apologize. That was Councilmember Flaherty's hand that I saw.
Oh, I saw his hand too. If there are no further comments from the public, let's come back to council for either additional questions or a final comment, and we will start with Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, I had an additional question. Thank you. I guess by way of framing it or preface, I found this process a little bit odd, both in thinking about what our guidance and code anticipates when it thinks about a public benefit for a vacated alley. I've mentioned before that I think there needs to be a nexus, essentially, that what's sought to be achieved could not be achieved if the alley wasn't vacated. And I've all along noted that what the administration is asking for and negotiating for seems like a wholly different kind, much more extractive in a sense and unrelated to the vacation of an alley. And what's interesting about it is that there's this negotiation ongoing between the administration and Peerless, but the negotiation is essentially for the administration's support of the vacation or not, because the administration doesn't actually grant the vacation. The council grants the vacation. So the council is actually like the appropriate body to be negotiating, essentially. But it doesn't seem like we've really been involved in that process. So I wanted to ask, I guess, Corporation Counsel Kate, if my understanding in that respect is correct, or has the administration actually worked with council members? I know they haven't worked with me directly, but worked with other council members to think about what would be appropriate public benefit, or what would be a viable option that the council might support with respect to the request to vacate an alley.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Councilmember Flaherty. So we first raised this issue in a council work session, actually, where we talked with council members there about the administration's view that it would be appropriate, and in fact is well within the guidelines, if you will, for right-of-way vacation, to seek a public art investment in a situation like this, where we do have market rate housing going in, other types of public benefit that we might be looking for in an area like this, like affordable housing, are not available and not forthcoming. And so just to elaborate a little bit on that, since you raised the question about is this extractive or is this actually in line with the guidelines for right-of-way vacation, and I say guidelines because the code does not limit you all, but the guidelines from 1987 talk about the relationship of vacation of right-of-way with the comp plan, among other various documents that guide the city's growth and development. And there are several references to public art, to using public art to create neighborhood and community, to commemorate historic areas of the city, and so on. And so I think it is well within the council's purview to take those features into account when you make this decision about right-of-way vacation for the existing right-of-way. Also, I'll just say, I mean, on the extractive comment, or any sense that, it's sort of untoward for the city to ask for something like this. I've been here a few months now, and I've seen plenty of negotiations between the city and private property owners who are trying to basically do a deal with the city for their property that the city needs for public use, whether that is expansion of public trails, whether it is the sale of a building. And they do not shy away from driving a hard bargain for an exchange of value for the assets that they have. And I don't begrudge them that, but I guess I also don't feel like it's any different when the city holds a valuable asset to say that we actually do have something that you want and need for your project, and we are willing to work with you and to try to negotiate a reasonable deal for that. We think that the ask that we have proposed is reasonable. You're absolutely right. It is the council's decision. What we have been doing is communicating to the council first at the work session, as I said before, then in several sessions before your recess here about that. I've had a little bit of one-on-one dialogue with some council members in and around those meetings, and we were always absolutely happy to hear from council members about your all's views on this issue. And continue to be. So I hope that answers your questions. If you have others, or if I haven't answered them, please let me know.
I think that answers it. Thank you. So it was the administration's proposal, but we've been informed as of a work session and the other sessions. Thank you.
And other public meetings and discussions around that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, so Corporation Counsel Kate referred to Resolution 8702, which the City Council adopted to guide reviews of right-of-way vacation requests. And the two main considerations are the current status and access to the property, and the necessity of the vacation for the growth of the city. And under that item 2, it does refer to a relationship to the plans, master plans, thoroughfare plans, and things like that. Reading those guidelines, I just don't see that public art is, I mean, the alley in question is not necessary to access any property. It has a big smokestack in the way and has had that smokestack for decades. And I mean, I don't know the necessity for growth of the city. You know, our city is growing left and right, and there's building going on all the time for this kind of housing. So I don't know if vacating this alley is necessary for the growth of the city. But given that those are our two considerations, I really don't understand how public art factors into this. I think you'd really have to have a very loose interpretation. And I'm sorry, this is developing into a comment. Maybe Ms. Kate can reply and give her take on the guidelines provided to council by Resolution 8702.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember Piedmont-Smith. So yes, there are a number of things listed in those guidelines, including the ones that you mentioned, but it does talk about the relationship between, and growth. It's not just growth of the city for growth's sake. It's obviously trying to connect growth with the values that are expressed in the various plans that it references there. So it talks about potential for increased benefit to the city under private ownership, and then the relationship of vacation with the comp plan and various other plans. And when you look at the comprehensive plan, for example, that's what I was referring to before. If you look at some of the goals, public space for culture is part of that, support cultural spaces in all areas of Bloomington, especially downtown and urban village centers. Ensure culturally significant places and spaces are preserved and celebrated, encourage partnerships with the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to engage in creative placemaking projects, and encourage the use of public art to create a neighborhood identity. So those are some of the goals that are in the comprehensive plan. It also has a goal about preservation of assets of historic, architectural, archaeological, and social significance. And part of that, the policy under that goal is work with HAND and the HPC to aid in advocacy for and monitoring of historic structures and places, placemaking, opportunities for art installations that explore our history. There are some other parts of it, a program suggestion, some outcomes and indicators, all of which talk about cultural spaces, developing cultural spaces, and commemorating historic spaces as well. So I don't think it is outside the realm of looking at what we're talking about here and saying that this is legitimate for you all to consider in the course of your overarching, I think, obligation as council members, which is to consider the public benefit when you are disposing of a public asset. I think the guidelines draw a connection to the things that are in the comp plan that are related to public art. And so that's what we're proposing. Councilmember Flaherty is entirely right. And again, as I said before, it's your decision. What we're doing is making a recommendation to the council, but you all have to decide what you want to do and what you think is appropriate.
So when I read this language that was in our packet from Resolution 8702, necessity, okay, so this is how we're being asked to vacate an alley. Right? It's the right-of-way vacation that is at question here. It's not, we're not being asked yes or no, do you want public art here? We're being asked yes or no, does this alley segment provide a public benefit that is very important to the city? And so first, we're supposed to consider the current status and access to the property, current utilization of the right-of-way as a means of connectivity. And it's not really, I mean, because you can't go through. I mean, you can drive into the parking lot, good, but you can't go all the way through. And the second is necessity for growth of the city. And again, we're talking about the vacation of the alley. Is this necessary for the growth of the city? And again, it's up to interpretation, that's clear. I mean, do we think that this whole project is necessary for the growth of the city? I don't know. But we're talking about the alley vacation and its relation to the master plan and the comp plan. And so I just feel like it's very tenuous at best to say that we want public art here, and we're only going to vacate this alley if you give us public art, because that's not the relation to the plan. The relation to the plan is this particular area north of the Johnson Creamery building. Does that have to be where the public art is in the city of Bloomington? Is that the only space we have available? We have the smokestack, yes. We can put a plaque there, but do we have to have a $200,000 public art investment there? I just don't, I fail to see the connection. And I'm sorry, it's a comment. I'm done. Thank you.
Well, it's fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
I get it. I get your view. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I see a hand up from Councilmember Flaherty?
Yes. Thank you. I guess I'm still trying to understand the administration's perspective in some respects. I certainly agree with what Ms. Kate shared, that we have these sections of the comp plan that emphasize the importance of public art that does provide a public benefit. But I guess I've been emphasizing this for me, my understanding of the language, that there's this nexus between whether or not having to do with the alley vacation itself, and that just doesn't seem to be the case here. So my question is, hypothetical, would it be the administration's view that a request for $200,000 for public art on Kirkwood Street would be appropriate in this case, as opposed to a public art, at the stack? Because it's still a public benefit. It's all still, supported by the comp plan. We're giving up something of value, the alley, and we're getting something in exchange, public benefit art on Kirkwood Street. Would that satisfy?
I heard Kirkwood, but I didn't hear, I think you said a figure, and I didn't hear that.
Oh, I said $200,000 to make it equivalent to, I think, what the proposal was most recently. But the figures, I think, immaterial, largely.
No, I mean, I think I understand your question. I think that our ask is looking at this particular build and this particular place, and the alley that you are being asked to vacate is an alleyway that does sit right on top of a historic district. We have the smokestack being taken down to 60 feet, albeit for public safety purposes. No one's questioning the need to do that. But no, I don't know that we would be asking for a build on Kirkwood. I think what we're recommending to council is a project that is part and parcel of the area that you are being asked to vacate and the significance of that area, so that really from the outset of these discussions, we've talked about public art in this space and this area as a way of commemorating and honoring the Johnson Creamery Historic District and doing something valuable in that space. So no, I don't think we're trying to say, yeah, we can bootstrap, and why don't you build a new, something down by a Switchyard Park or something like that. We're not attempting to suggest that would be appropriate here. I think what we are suggesting is something that is related to the area in which you're being asked to act. Does that help answer your question?
I think so. If I could follow up with another hypothetical, what about a different example? So there's a geographic nexus.
You
for
lawyers,
I've
sorry.
I've understood. What about requiring a green roof in exchange for the alley vacation? Is that something that the administration would think for this building on this site, essentially? Is that something that would be permissible in the administration's view of the guidance for alley right-of-way vacation?
Well, I would imagine, again, I would look back at the guidelines, I'd look back at the various plans, and if the council and if we identify areas in the plans that support that, and we certainly do value environmental sustainability as part of Bloomington's growth and trajectory, then a green roof, I mean, I don't know if you're about the cost of that, but if you're asking just about the concept of it, I don't know that that would be something that we would say no to. You know, in other words, I don't know that that's out of bounds. Basically what you have is a public asset, okay? You have some land. Someone's asking you for it to enable them to build something that, again, it's market rate housing. And so in terms of your consideration of public benefit in exchange for that property, then you might well be able to find a nexus between a green roof on that property and some of the documents that are referenced in the right-of-way vacation guidelines from 1987. And I say or 1985 or 1987 because they're obviously old. So in that sense, you know, our thinking on things like green roofs, I'm not sure anyone was talking about that back in the 80s, but nevertheless, the plans that are being referenced here are plans that are more recent than that. So yes, you might take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Additional questions? It looks like we have more questions, right? No? You ready for a comment? Are there additional questions then before we go to final comment? Councilmember Volin.
Just to review the negotiation, the discussion of what the alley was worth led the petitioner to offer, was it $75,000? Is that right, Mr. Cordero?
That is correct.
Okay. Would the Peerless be willing to commit to $75,000 and moving the alley?
I think that then that's still too much.
Okay, that answers my question.
I think
Thank
we
you.
could commit to, I think we would be willing to commit to something in the neighborhood of $10,000 to put up a plaque, or somebody had discussed some sort of info board or something like that to help commemorate the Johnson Creamery smokestack. I think we could commit to something like that.
But I mean, the alley, the cost of moving the alley does not rise. I mean, it's not going to be that much effort. You know, like if everyone's in agreement that the alley being moved is acceptable, you know, well, never mind. I'm trying to make a negotiation now, and that's probably inappropriate here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I think we're ready for final comment. Councilmember Smith, were you prepared?
Yes, thank you. I still have a hard time connecting these two things. The proposal we're looking to vote on is to vacate the alley. So that's the proposal that I'm looking at to make a decision and vote on. And I have a hard time with this connection with the public art. So I'd either, it would kind of be probably good to think about it and let us delay our decision. But I'm just one of 9, so that's my current thought at this point.
All right, thank you. Are there additional final comments? Councilmember Volin.
Yeah, I kind of see both sides here. I get what the administration's trying to do. I get that, you know, there is an asset that is worth something. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, though, and I think Councilmember Smith as well, have both pointed out that, you know, this is about, it has to first be about connectivity. Art is sort of a, like the next best, not the next best thing, but just sort of a substitute for the question of connectivity. I think that the petitioner's suggestion to move the alley south one, you know, to make the southern border of the alley the northern border is not unreasonable. I also think that $10,000 for a plaque is kind of not enough. I think that I agree with Councilmember Smith that we could use a little bit more time, but I would urge everyone here to let's be reasonable. There's a smokestack that is the tallest structure in the city and has been, I think, it's the tallest structure in the city ever. And it sits directly on the existing alley. So the alley was all but forgotten. And the fact that we discovered it so late in this process is unfortunate for everybody. But it's clearly not that important. And we have a chance here, I think, to strike a compromise. I think that moving the alley is reasonable. I think that something more than $10,000 is also reasonable. So I'm happy to vote to postpone indefinitely until a reasonable deal has been struck. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I move that the council lay ordinance 2215 on the table.
Do we want to hear from other council members first before we entertain a motion?
Yes, please.
All right, I will postpone making I will take it back and do it later.
Usually we allow at least a first round of comment before we make a motion, but hey. You know,
I didn't see any other hands. So.
I see Councilmember Rallo's.
Please go ahead, colleague.
You've always forgotten when you're on the screen.
You are recognized.
Well, I do find value in the alley, and I'll tell you why. Because, well, first of all, I don't see any public benefit in facilitating a large building mass on the Beeline Trail. The Beeline is a pedestrian facility, and I would like human-scaled architecture along it. I know that we haven't always lived up to that, but I think that it's important. So as we discussed during the Hopewell plan, the council had concern about value of alleys, and it wasn't just for accessibility, it was also to break up facades and massing to promote this kind of human scale in an urban environment. So I find it a value, and I don't see public art as, I see that as ancillary. It's not really, I agree with Councilmember Piedmont Smith. I don't think it really even goes into consideration formulation to try to imagine a benefit exchange, cost-benefit exchange in this case. Rather, I think that we should keep the alley, and the developer can live within that that sort of geographic constriction. So I will be voting against the vacation of the alleyway because I think it's important not to have large-scale massing buildings along a public trail. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments from my colleagues and folks we heard from tonight. And I share a lot of the sentiments that Councilmember Rallo just shared. We've had some extensive conversation and discussion about alleys recently, and there are many benefits. Even connectivity is one, but it's certainly not the only one. And connectivity doesn't have to be through connectivity. I mean, you're granting access here with an alley to the buildings, to parking, can reduce drive cuts, control building scale and max kind of footprint. So all those benefits are real. I don't think I agree, though, with the point that the proposed building is out of scale or not human scale. It's not. The height and size could be almost equivalent with a separate design that takes into account this alley. It really would not be different as perceived by a pedestrian from any angle. You're talking a building that is 10 feet less wide or something like that. So it's not about so much that the existing alley is controlling in a way that the proposed shifted alley would not control. So I don't think that, for me, quite hits the mark. I think the massing is fine, and I think market rate housing in a downtown walkable area is an important part of the city's growth. It's that many units and that many people living downtown with a lower carbon footprint that don't need to be in sprawl development instead. It's important. It's part of our vision for the city. It's part of our climate action plan's vision. So I don't want to discount that value and public benefit, of that by its own virtue, without, deed restricted affordable housing, though, of course, we all want that as well when we have the tools to pursue it. I'll reiterate that I don't think what the administration has negotiated for their support of a vacation really makes a lot of sense or is consistent with the guidance. If there was a big public art display that could not be installed unless the alley was vacated because it, required space or something like that, that would be different, because then we would have to vacate the alley, in order to achieve this benefit. But that's not at all what's being proposed. But here we're asking, what I'm trying to propose is that we would vacate an alley to get this public benefit of additional housing that is financially viable, because it's not financially viable for the developer at this point if we don't vacate the alley. And it's a slightly more units than you would get if the alley remained in place. The benefit there is marginal, but it's there. When you factor in the dedication of essentially a substitute alley that still provides all those access benefits, massing control over time, et cetera, to me, it's a reasonable compromise that accommodates what's really an unfortunate set of circumstances, that Peerless didn't know this from the start. So 2 weeks ago, I thought I would probably vote against it in any case, regardless of the public art negotiations, which I personally find kind of immaterial or somewhat inappropriate. But I think I'm to the point where if the alley substitution is viable, I would support that and support vacating the existing alley, subject to that dedication of a substitute alley, essentially, or a slightly shifted alley. I think that there are benefits to that we will see. But I would certainly advocate for the approach that Council Attorney Lucas outlined, which is that we would table this ordinance tonight and let that process work itself out at Plan Commission. I guess my parting comment is that if colleagues of mine share that view, that they would be willing to support a vacation in that case, that they state that tonight, if they're ready to state that conditional vacation, because that will give appropriate guidance and assurance, essentially, to Mr. Cordero and Peerless to take those next steps. They can, of course, have individual conversations with all of us to ask that question anyway, but it might help if folks would be willing to indicate that. So with that, I'll end my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, and again, we heard Stephen Lucas refer to this, the motion that you're proposing or seeming to be leaning toward would be to lay the ordinance on the table, not to postpone. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, and that's, functionally the same. It would be a postpone indefinitely until this issue of subdivision and platting and could be resolved. We could take it back up as soon as that process is resolved at the next regular session.
Whereas postponing, we're going to have to come back to this more quickly, then we may not have enough time to deliberate on this. Is that what you're kind of thinking?
Right. This allows us to accommodate a little bit of uncertainty about the time it might take to go through Plan Commission.
Got it. Okay. I see hand up from Councilmember Rollo again. Does anybody else have a comment who hasn't made a comment yet? I think let's go to Councilmember Sims. I think you had a.
Thank you.
And then
a lot of moving parts here. I'm just be honest, I don't like it. There's been too much stuff going on. There's a lot of time that has passed. I agree with Councilmember Piedmont Smith that based on the language of the alley vacation, and I quote if I'm correct, it could be up for interpretation. And that's fair. You see it one way, I may see it another way. The thing with me is that this alley vacation was a non-issue, as we all agree, until it was discovered. I'm not blaming anyone or anything, but if we discovered it, then Peerless could have or should have discovered it as well. That alley, and some people say, hey, it's nothing, it's that. It is a piece of property, a right-of-way that we own. It is valuable to us. And if you think it's not, that's fine. But I think there is value to this. One of the things, again, it kind of gets a little bit messy. The administration wants one thing. I think we started off at 250 or 300,000 for a while, down to 200,000. I heard from Peerless 75,000. Now that's not even worth it. Oh, well, 10,000 maybe. See, that's too messy. And part of my feeling is, again, market rate housing is what it is. I'm not against development and all that. I am kind of it just don't sit well with me when I'm about to approve a project or be a part of it where the rents of a 2-bedroom apartment is going to be higher than a mortgage on a 3-bedroom house out on the side of town that I live on. And we talk about housing. Yes, we do need housing. Do we need this? We may want it. We may can use it. I'm sure we will. That's not what we need, I think. And if it fits within the plan commission and the UDO and all these things, we can support it. But we have that piece of property that is the right-of-way that has value, at least to me. So if we postpone this or deal with it a little later, I mean, I could live with that. If we vote on it tonight, I cannot support vacating the alley with not getting anything, and particularly less than 10 grand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scambolery.
Yes, thank you. There are a lot of moving parts to this, and there are a lot of elements to this conversation that make it awkward. I think it's awkward that this right-of-way, the need to vacate a right-of-way was not discovered in time. I think it's awkward that Peerless has a dispute and needed to file a claim against an insurance company. It's awkward that an alley happens to have a smokestack in the middle of it. There are a number of facts here that are awkward. So whatever decision we make, we're going to need to do it in that context and just do the best we can. So I can just talk about what's compelling to me and what's not. One assertion that was not compelling to me is the notion that the city is giving up nothing. The implication being that there's not a lot of value here, the city hasn't paid attention to it. If this plot had no value, we wouldn't be in our fourth meeting discussing it. So I think clearly it does have some value. I think looking at the project itself, there is an argument that this provides some public benefit simply because it provides housing. I think it provides housing. I think that's fair. I don't think it provides that kind of housing that would truly provide a public benefit, not at $1,000 plus a bedroom. I think affordable housing is what we have prioritized and what we all seek. I think, and I'm not suggesting this is a bad project or that it's unattractive or that it's not appealing, but in terms of public benefit, I don't think it can be argued that additional luxury apartments provide us with a public benefit. Because of that, I think it's absolutely reasonable to ask a developer to make some investments in the area that they wish to develop that do enrich it in some way. So I do think that, I do agree that the connection to art can be a little awkward, but again, that's where we are. I am not at all comfortable with the notion that we could vote yes on this right-of-way vacation tonight and then follow up later and talk about moving it. I am not comfortable with that at all. So were the petitioner to push for a vote tonight, my vote is a solid no. So there is that. I am not averse to tabling indefinitely, but I'm not willing to vacate a right-of-way with just a general promise and a plan to actually start a conversation at some point involving some people about moving an alley. That doesn't feel like I would be a responsible steward of this property. So with that, if we vote on this tonight, my vote is no. And if my colleagues feel strongly about the need to table, I would find that acceptable too. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go next before we call on second rounds. Did you? Oh, you didn't have a first round. Go ahead then. Okay. Well, I am not compelled by the art project. That made me feel very uncomfortable from the very, very beginning. I kind of agree with many of the comments that have been made that that's as far a stretch as to a public benefit. I certainly would have preferred more affordability, more even sustainability features. So that art project just felt a little, this was not the right thing to use as a bargaining chip, if you will, or a negotiation for equal value. What I do find a little bit compelling from tonight's discussion about moving the alley in a different place is that actually might improve the area in terms of putting an alley where maybe it would get better use. And if that helps the petitioner to do what they need to do before they have to completely reconfigure or kill their plans. I am leaning more toward the laying the matter on the table to give the planning department more time to take a look at that platting, because I don't know that we should make that decision here tonight without planning weighing in, without maybe even the HPC weighing in, and that's going to take some time, more time than if we just postpone. So laying it on the table until other parties can have an opportunity to digest, is this actually a better thing for the property in general to move the alley? That might be the only way that I would feel comfortable voting tonight. But again, good arguments all across the board. It is messy. This whole thing has been messy. Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you very much. It is true that some of my earlier questions were comments, so I certainly understand if you thought I'd already had a first round question or comment. So I echo a lot of what has been said already. I do think that any city right-of-way has value. I do want to say, however, that it is unfortunate and hopefully will not be repeated that there were inadequate records of this alley never being vacated, and that a smokestack was allowed to be built in the right-of-way to begin with. Those were mistakes that somebody made a long time ago that hopefully will not be repeated and have led to this messy process. I am inclined to, I can envision myself supporting the vacation of the alley if the dedication of a new right-of-way goes through all of the normal review process and approvals and does not, run into any snags. I do feel like, as Council President Sandberg said, this actually might be a little bit more useful location for the alley because it would actually be kind of a drive for the parking spaces. And of course, at the end, right next to the B-line, you would still have part of the building there, so it still wouldn't connect all the way to the B-line, but certainly pedestrian right-of-way could connect there. And I just want to mention, in regard to what Councilmember Rollo said earlier about kind of massive monolithic buildings along the B-line, I also do not like massive monolithic buildings, especially where we're trying to encourage a lot of pedestrian use. But I don't see this building as fitting that description. If you look in our packet, I mean, it's kind of a stair-step frontage that does not make the building appear very wide at all. So I just have a personal disagreement, I guess, about that. So just to give the petitioner a sense of where I stand, and obviously I wanted to make this motion earlier, and sorry I jumped the gun. I didn't mean to step on anybody's toes. But where I stand is that I would be in favor of tabling this ordinance and bringing it back if and when all of the proper steps have been followed in order to establish a new alley right-of-way to the south. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the hand up from Councilmember Rollo and then Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you. Good discussion. I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Scambaluri, that this does have value. And in fact, I would still maintain that it has value with respect to preventing excessive massing. And what I mean by that is I'm in agreement that the building has an irregular east facade, but the length of it is equivalent to Smallwood. And the west facade is monolithic and is, again, the length of Smallwood. So if that's what we're facilitating, if that is what the council believes we should facilitate, then this is our opportunity. I disagree. I think that we should have human scale buildings when we can affect them. And in this case, that is what we're given here because of the public asset of a alley right-of-way. So I will be, I won't be in favor of postponing to move the alley to facilitate a larger building, and I won't be in favor of vacating the alley. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowen.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councilmember Rollo. This is a good discussion. A couple things. One is I believe this council approved buildings of similar massing on the Beeline Trail in Switchyard Park not too long ago. The fact that they didn't get built doesn't mean that we haven't already been accustomed to such construction. But I would also point out at this point that effectively tabling is a temporary no at the very least. It's not going to get approved with a tabling. It gives the petitioner a chance to get the ducks in a row to ensure that their idea of moving the alley a few feet south is doable and not simply a promise that we may find less than acceptable. So it sounds like that there would be enough votes to approve it if Plan Commission and HPC were duly consulted. Tabling is the better option here than postponing to a certain date. So I will support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I see Councilmember Flaherty has a hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. Just two clarifying points. One is that I think I share the view of I'm hearing from a lot of folks that public right-of-way has inherent value, no question. We don't know what the future of development is going to look like for the next 50, 100 plus years. That's why I thought it was essential to get that included in the Hopewell site, and why I would have such a hard time vacating this alley if it weren't for the dedication of an equivalent size of right-of-way that in my mind serves an equivalent or maybe better purpose. So it's not that there's not value in the alley, it's that we're getting something in exchange that is of equivalent value in my mind in the sort of proposed sequence of events. And second is just to clarify with respect to the scale of design, Smallwood is 300 feet long. It is an entire city block. That's not the size of this development. I just measured the footprint on Google Maps of both. The longest side of this building is less than 140 feet, less than half the size of Smallwood. So it again, fits more or less fits the space of a half block scale, which is what alleys help to do and control. It does exceed it by about 8 or 10 feet because of this historic oversight with respect to the right-of-way, et cetera, et cetera. But I did want to correct the record for that point. And that's all for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We ready for a motion?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that council lay Ordinance 2215 on the table.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Sims,
No.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
and Rallo.
No.
All right, and that passes, let's see, 6-0. All right, thank you all. Now we are ready for legislation for first reading.
Pardon me, I've lost my place.
Would you like our...
Madam President, I move that, if you could tell me the ordinance.
22.
Sorry. 2220, thank you. Madam President, I move that ordinance 2220 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's call the roll.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
and Flaherty.
Yes.
And will the clerk please read?
It's a long one.
I know. I feel sorry for you.
All right. Ordinance 22-20 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic. Amending Section 15.12.030 to remove 3 signalized intersections and add 3 signalized intersections. Section 15.20.010 by deleting the reference to restricted turn intersections. Section 15.24.020 by changing speed limits at 4 locations. Section 15.32.030 to change parking on Lincoln Street between Smith and 3rd to back-in angle parking and to add pull-in parking on South Morton Street from West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane to 190 degrees north of West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane. Section 15.32.050 to allow for prohibiting parking in municipal parking lots to respond to weather and maintenance issues. Section 15.32.080 to remove no parking spaces on South Morton Street and South Rogers Street and to add no parking spaces on Lincoln Street and North Park Avenue. Section 15.32.100 to add 2 loading zones on East 4th Street. Section 15.37.020 to change the boundaries of the Garden Hill Residential Neighborhood Permit Parking Zone. Section 15.040.010 to add paid parking spaces and the Trades District Garage. And Section 15.48.020 to add an administrative towing fee when vehicles are towed for reserved parking or outstanding citation violations. And the synopsis is, this ordinance amends Title 15, Vehicles and Traffic of the Bloomington Municipal Code, and comes forth at the request of city staff, the Parking Commission, the Traffic Commission, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Commission. The ordinance makes the following changes. Removes 3 signalized intersections and adds 3 signalized intersections. Deletes BMC 15.20.010 restricted turn intersections. Changes speed limits at 4 locations. Provides for back-in parking on the west side of Lincoln Street between Smith and 3rd, and provides for pull-in parking on the west side of South Morton Street from West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane to 190 degrees north of West Patterson Drive and Grimes Lane. Allows the city to prohibit parking in city parking lots in anticipation of snow emergencies or lot maintenance and repair. Removes no parking spaces on Morton Street and South Rogers Street and adds no parking spaces on Lincoln Street and North Park Avenue. Adds 2 loading zones on East 4th Street, alters the boundaries of the Garden Hill Residential Neighborhood Permit Parking Zone, adds additional pay-by-phone parking on North Walnut Grove, East 13th Street, and South Rogers Street, and adds the Trades District Garage to the list of municipal parking lots and garages, and adds an administrative fee for towing vehicles of $25.
Thank you. And I am referring ordinance 22-20 to the Committee of the Whole to meet on July 27th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. And with that, we are now ready for the second round of public comment. Yes.
Discharge ordinance 2220 from Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All right.
I think that it's your typical Title 15 omnibus ordinance, and there's nothing particularly controversial in it. So I feel like maybe no committee meeting is necessary. Thank you.
All right, there's been a motion on the table. Do we have any discussion on that?
Madam President.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's okay. I plan to vote in favor of the amendment, and I just wanted to note that even if something comes up in second reading, if that is the first time we discuss it substantively, of course, we have options to go to a third reading should we decide we need more time. This doesn't foreclose the possibility of extending time if needed. It just opens the possibility of disposing of the issue more expediently. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, I also support the motion. I think that another thing to consider is that this would be the only item for second reading, well, as far as I know, for our first meeting in August, and it would be the only item definitely in committee of the whole, so we could save ourselves an evening that could possibly be spent on PS Lit matters or other matters that we are working on. So I support just going directly to a second hearing on this Title 15 ordinance.
All right, anyone else? Do we need to, no, there's no public comment on this, right? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to discharge to the regular session?
Yes. Give me 1 second, please. Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes.
Bolin.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Scambolery.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes.
All right, and that passes 8-0-0. Now, we are ready for the second round for public comment, and if anyone is here in chambers, please come to the podium. Do we have anyone at home on Zoom who might wish to make a public comment here in our second round?
For anybody still watching on Zoom, if you'd like to make a public comment and haven't spoken at the first opportunity, you can indicate your desire to speak by using the raise hand feature in your control bar. You can find that under the Reactions tab or the More tab, or you can indicate that you'd like to comment by sending a chat to the meeting host. And don't see any hands going up immediately.
And we will go ahead with chambers.
I'm Mark Haggerty, and I've come to report on the basketball goal at the south end of the Switchyard Park. It's not fixed. It's still just the way that it's been for all these months. Now, I've talked with the Parks Department lower people and upper people, and Ron Smith has come down and taken a look at it and everything like that. So it'd be nice if we had a functional basketball goal in Bloomington, Indiana. And then we've had a couple more people get hurt on those standards. You got little kids that play down there, and this far from the out-of-bounds line, like, is the standard that holds the goalpost up. Unlike IU or NBA or anything, this steel rectangular post is sitting there. You could break your arm on it just by swinging around, still being in bounds. Now, the Parks Department that says that's not a problem because they're indemnified against that kind of injury by some kind of obscure playground equipment rule. But it's not acceptable on that particular court because we have so many kids playing and people have gotten hurt already. The second thing is the lights. If the tennis courts and baseball diamonds and the skateboard park can be lit up until 11, why not? Why not have lights on the basketball? It's right next to a police station there. It gives us a chance to play when it gets later in the fall and earlier in the spring. The other thing is the bathrooms down there, they get closed up at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I guess to keep the homeless away. But there's no place to pee. And basketball players have to pee and drink too. So those things seem like minor things that we can probably get done with just a little bit of elbow grease. The other thing is, I've spoken to the county attorney and the city attorney and talked about gun control laws and things like that, and I urge you once again to read things with your own eyes, and look for ingenious ways to challenge this threat to public safety that's coming ever closer. And a woman in my neighborhood was shot in the neck. A guy on the south side got shot. People don't have any idea who they're being shot by. So I know that's not happening out in the burbs and a lot of the nicer neighborhoods, but we've been having fairly regular shootings up on the hill. There are some ways that we can protect ourselves, and there's some ways that we can challenge the law in our own way. We don't have to accept cautious legal advice when it comes to public safety. Legal advice on the Second Amendment is not necessarily, or what the legislature does, is not necessarily conducive to public safety. These people are going to get us killed. And we have to find a way to resist in our town because we're a kind of a prime target for this kind of thing. Anyway, I continue to talk with people, and I urge people to talk with me about it. I'm looking at the statute, and I'm looking for ways that we can protect the polls, the farmers market, the fairgrounds, our parks. What the hell? We should find a way. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Any additional public comment from Zoom? All right, let us move on then to our council scheduling. Now, we just did vacate the first reading to the regular session. Do we need to cancel the committee of the whole? Is that not required now?
I think a motion to cancel next week's committee of the whole would be appropriate.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and will the clerk please call the roll on eliminating our committee of the whole next week?
Councilmember Bolden?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Scambolery?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Thank you. And can we talk about other things on our schedule?
Council has a scheduled work session this Friday, and there are potentially two items of legislation that would be ready for your preview. One is a historic designation for the Bethel AME church that has come out of the HPC, and the other item is a resolution I understand some council members are interested in bringing to further address the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So with those two items as potential topics for the work session, if members could indicate whether they'd like to continue with that work session, that would be helpful.
All right, we can have a show of hands who's available for the work session this Friday. Okay.
I see 4 hands, so unless there's a desire to cancel, we'll go ahead with that work session as planned. And I believe that's scheduled for the McCloskey room this Friday.
McCloskey room, thank you. All right, well, with that, I think our business is concluded, and so let us move.
Sandberg, may I intercede to make a correction to the
Yes.
appointments to boards and commissions due to an oversight on my part? Is now appropriate? Councilor Trini? It was just brought to my attention that James Simon who was appointed tonight to the Commission on the Status of Black Males, has already been appointed by the mayor to a mayoral seat on that commission. So I will ask Council Attorney Lucas what actions need to be done today.
Thank you for catching that. So if the council has made an appointment to someone who's already been appointed, what do we need to do to retract or?
A motion to retract would certainly make a record that the council is taking that appointment, undoing that appointment. So it would be helpful to have a motion so that it could be reflected in the minutes. So a motion to retract might be appropriate now.
Based on I would like to make a motion to retract the appointment of James Simon to the Commission on the Status of Black Males.
All right, moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sims? Yes. Scambolery?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
And Bolden?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, thank you for that catch, Madam Deputy Clerk. All in favor, move to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Good night. Thank you.